Okay. Good evening. And welcome to everyone who's joining us on the internet. Well, as I said last week, we're sort of in a meat and potatoes section. Takes a little more effort to digest. And so we're not going to move through this rapidly, and we will do a little bit of review. It is helpful not to read this like a two-dimensional creature, which can only move backward and forward on a line. Don't read it with such focused attention that you're only letting the sentence you're reading register with you. As a three-dimensional creature, you have the capacity to stand back and get an overview. And so, from time to time, it's helpful to take a look at what chapter you're reading in. What's the subject of the chapter? Because it will help you put into context the sentence you're reading at the moment. Now, in the paragraph before the one I said we would start with, we have this difficult sentence that people have trouble with, and which I spent some time talking about last week. It says, recognize what does not matter, and if your brothers ask you for something outrageous, do it because it does not matter. What's confusing is, what is the it referring to? And so, I'm going back to, in the Sparkly book, page 258, the first full paragraph. And I want to remind you that the chapter we're in is called God's Plan for Salvation. That's what everything we're reading about is relevant to. It says here, how simple, then, is God's plan for salvation? There is but one response to reality, for reality evokes no conflict at all. There is but one teacher of reality, who understands what it, reality, is. He does not change his mind about reality, because reality does not change. Now, mind you, this one teacher of reality is the Holy Spirit. Again, and I cannot say this too often, and I will repeat it over and over, that one teacher is the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is nothing more than your right mind. You, in your innate, fundamental clarity. Continuing, although your, interpretations of reality are meaningless in your divided state, his remain consistently true. He gives them to you because they are for you. In other words, it's your birthright to not only include them, but to be fully conscious of them. Now, do not attempt to help a brother in your way. For you, and I'm going to add, all by yourself, cannot help yourselves. But hear his call, your brother's call, for the help of God, and you will recognize your own need for the Father. Now, your brother and your world are always presenting to you the opportunity to recognize God there. That's the only thing that's ever being presented to you. If the brother, perhaps like yourself, is unconscious of his birthright, is unconscious of his source, and therefore unaware of who and what he truly is, behaves in an obtuse way, or in a way that calls for confirmation of what he ignorantly believes, it is still a call for you to recognize God there. It's still a call for love. There is never an occasion for you to function in any other way than finding God in the middle of what is happening, to find God to be the center and circumference of what is happening, no matter what mumbo-jumbo is coming out of your brother's mouth. That's the only thing you're being called upon to do. And interestingly enough, that's your divine function. That's your birthright to be able to do. That's what you should find yourself doing all the time, and that is what you will find yourself doing all the time as you forget less and less that that's your function. Again, do not attempt to help a brother in your way, for you cannot help yourselves, but hear his call for the help of God, and you will recognize your own need for the Father. When you recognize your own need for the Father, you will turn to the Father instead of your opinions, your best judgments, all the definitions you have already created for everything you're experiencing. And so you will turn to the Father instead of your memory and your beliefs. That's what's being called for. Now let's go back to page 263. Recognize what does not matter, and if your brothers ask you for something outrageous, do it because it does not matter. If the only thing you're being called upon to do is to be willing to recognize God right there, where something ungodlike seems to be presenting itself, then you have to recognize that the mumbo-jumbo that's coming out of your brother's mouth doesn't matter. The mumbo-jumbo that comes out of your brother's mouth is inevitably going to be an invitation to you as an independent authority to respond to him from the same place of ignorance of your birthright that he's suffering from. That's what's outrageous. And that's what doesn't matter. That is what doesn't mean anything at all. And so you must recognize that the mumbo-jumbo doesn't matter, and you must not take the bait and come from your best limited place in order to respond. Now, if when your brother comes on to you with something, with an outrageous request, to join him in the belief of lack of any kind, he usually will do it in a manipulative and coercive way, and usually in a way that calls your integrity into question. he will not be treating you well, at least not according to the agreed upon definitions of politeness and manners. And if you take offense at his manner of approaching you, you are then likely to find that the idea that what is happening is a call for love is outrageous. How can I respond to this as a call for love? How on earth can I possibly justify being loving, being in my peace, in the face of this attack? You see? And then you must realize that the mumbo-jumbo going on in your mind doesn't matter, because that is not your function. And you must make the choice to turn to the altar, to turn to the Holy Spirit, to turn to the place of excellence in you, in which your inheritance, your God-derived birthright, is waiting for you to embrace, so that it may find expression through you, because your letting it through you is your ultimate divine function. And you must do that. And you do that because what your brother is asking for, which is different from that, doesn't matter. That isn't what matters. Your brother's poverty asks for gifts, not for further impoverishment, not for confirmation of his bad situation. His poverty asks for that which will uncover his wholeness. You see, it asks for gifts. You, who could help them, are surely acting destructively if you accept their poverty as yours. If you had not invested as they had, it would never occur to you to overlook their need. You see, something is going on there. There is an experience of need. What is the need for? The need is for clarity, for understanding, for the truth that replaces the belief that he or she is suffering from, that causes the belief to become so nonsensical and meaningless that it is immediately dropped in favor for what is meaningful. Recognize what does not matter. What does not matter is how he's perceiving himself at the moment. And what does not matter is how you, unjoined, might be perceiving him as well. Recognize what does not matter and do what does. Hear his call for the help of God, and you will recognize your own need for the Father. And recognizing it, you will lean into the Father. And what will result will be the expression of the answer that heals. Okay. Don't be tempted by niggling thoughts that say, well, why was that written in such an unclear way when it could have been said clearly? And don't let niggling thoughts come in that say, oh, well, because it's difficult to understand, maybe there is more to understand. No. I have expressed it with perfect clarity what the need is. And you will have to agree with me that it is consistent with everything else we've been reading as we have been going through the course. So be at rest with the truth. Be at rest with the answer. Embrace it, and when the temptation comes to practice doubt or to still remain somewhat ill at ease, dismiss it. Dismiss it. And don't entertain it further. I'm going to read the whole paragraph that we ended with last week. Recognize what does not matter, and if your brothers ask you for something outrageous, do it because it does not matter. Refuse, and your opposition establishes that it does matter to you. It is only you, therefore, who have made the request outrageous. For nothing can be asked of you in all your little tininess, and every request of a brother is for you. Just as every aspect of the universe elicits from you the recognition of God in it, it is for you. It is for you coming back into your right mind, where you're not seeing your interposed imaginations instead of reality, instead of creation as it is. Why would you insist in denying him? For to do so is to deny yourself and impoverish both. He is asking for what? Salvation. Now that may not be what's coming out of his mouth. What's coming out of his mouth is most likely to be a request for you to see the reality of his dilemma and to join him in confirming its reality. That's what will come out of his mouth. But he is asking for salvation, as you are. Poverty is of the ego and never of God. No outrageous request can be made of one who recognizes what is valuable and wants to accept nothing else. Now, if you don't want to accept as valuable the fact that it's your birthright to be in a constant state of recognizing and acknowledging God in everything, meaning actually having the experience of God in everything, then it means that you want to accept something else. Don't. Stop wanting to accept something else and abandon it. Continuing. Salvation is for the mind, and it is attained through peace. This is the only thing that can be saved, and the only way to save it. In other words, peace is the only thing that can be saved, and the decision for peace and the letting of yourself into it is the only way it can be saved. It's the only way that you can find that it has been ever present with you and is the foundation of your being, or expressed more perfectly, the foundation of being, of existing. Any response other than love arises from a confusion about the what and the how of salvation. See? The only appropriate response is love, no matter what is presented to you, no matter how your brother is behaving. Love is the willingness to recognize that which is real with a capital R in each and everything. Not only is it the willingness to recognize it, it's the recognition of it. And the recognition of it always spontaneously occurs when nothing else is more important to you. Any response other than love arises from a confusion about the what and the how of salvation. And this is the only answer. You see how simple it is. It's easy to be devoted to that. It really is easy to be devoted to wanting to see the evidence of love and wanting to be the evidence of love. You just have to dare to abandon all other goals, all other intents, and just do the one thing, and to do it as consistently as you can through the day. Never, strong word, never lose sight of this. In other words, don't lose track of singularity of purpose. Never lose sight of this. And never let yourself, and never allow yourself to believe, even for an instant, that there is another answer. You see, your brother approaches you with a sense of lack, and most likely with some sort of grievance, because he's can't help but take offense at life when he's unconscious of his birthright and doesn't recognize himself in each and everything. And when he approaches you this way, out of habit, you think there's another answer than the only answer there is. You think the answer is defense. And so you employ it. And you've got to begin to be disciplined enough to recognize when you're doing it so that you can stop. Realize that there is another way to look at this, and then ask for the experience of how to look at it otherwise. And ask it of one who knows, not of one who doesn't. Ask of the Holy Spirit. Ask of the Father. Never lose sight of this, and never allow yourself to believe, even for an instant, that there is another answer. For you will surely place yourself among the poor, who do not understand that they dwell in abundance, and that salvation is come. Now, as usual, the ego, the private sense of self, that has figured out everything to the best of its ability without having any connection to what everything really is. And which, because it has separated itself from the Father, sees itself in a state of lack. Turns all of the experiences of lack into something positive. something that, if dealt with, will refine your soul, something that, if dealt with, will strengthen you, something which, if dealt with successfully, will move you closer to the ultimate of what you on your own can be. And it has done this with lack, with poverty, and it has suggested that poverty is valuable. It has suggested, in fact, that one who devotes his life to poverty can become so valuable that he's elevated to sainthood. Many of the great ones in your past were those who had taken a vow of poverty. And so, as a result of this belief, it becomes difficult for you to justify experiencing abundance, because you have few people in recent history who were abundant, who were significant in elevating the human condition, in elevating human thought, in getting past the significant beliefs that actually block each of you from reconnecting with your Father. Now, poverty and abundance are almost always associated with dollars and cents. But abundance should be equated with wholeness, not accumulation of lots, but wholeness itself, from which nothing is excluded. Poverty, on the other hand, should be equated with incompleteness, partialness, not being able to be in your right mind, wholly aware of everything in all of its infiniteness, in all of its unlimitedness. Poverty, in other words, ignorance, is not your birthright. Now, those who took vows of poverty made a decision as to what they were going to serve. God, as it's put, or mammon. The dollar, the wallet, the bank account, the CDs, the stocks and bonds, and most of all, position that all the accumulation of these things seem to substantiate. Those who took a vow of poverty decided not to serve that. They decided to serve a vision of God that they experienced within themselves. They devoted themselves to service, not accumulation. Giving, not getting.